Hello and welcome back into the Michigan Football Report. I'm Lana Bond, and this is the king of Michigan football media, James Yoder. A little bit of a different show for you guys today. He's not doing rumors. We're going to have a little bit more fun. We're first going to break down the 2018 depth chart for our Michigan Wolverines, then be taking a look at social mailbag. I know a lot of you guys had a question for the king himself, and then at the end, James Yoder will be breaking down his case on why he should be Harbaugh's next executive assistant.
Lana, no rumors say so much happened over the weekend with recruiting five new commitments to the 2019 class. We're going to break that down later in the week, tell you who's still out there that might commit maybe this week or this weekend. So we'll talk recruiting later in the week.
Yep, you guys are so spoiled. 2 Michigan football reports this week, but let's go ahead and get into that depth chart, starting none other than the quarterback position, James. We have Shea Patterson. I think it's pretty clear that he will be the starter for the Wolverines. Backing him up will be Dylan McCaffrey, and fighting it out for that third string spot is Brandon Peters and Joe Milton. James, what can you tell me about this position?
Yeah, so I talked about it in last week's or 2 weeks ago's the Saturday version about 9 days ago, Michigan Football Report. Shea Patterson is your unquestioned starter. He left spring practice knowing he's going to be starter. He's got a playbook that only he will be allowed to run this year with about a dozen or so run, pass option, or spread option style plays. So Shea Patterson's been your quarterback. I think the biggest development, I'm going out on a limb here. I don't think this is a guarantee this could happen, but I'm putting Dylan McCaffrey as your backup quarterback. Brandon Peters coming into his redshirt sophomore year, and of course Joe Milton, the true freshman. I think Milton will get some playing time because that new redshirt freshman rule that the NCAA just implemented. But big news here, Dylan McCaffrey will be your backup quarterback. I think it's a little bit of talent, McCaffrey being the younger guy. And then last but not least, Lana, Brandon Peters, hearing some attitude issues. I don't have enough to say maybe he's going to transfer, but quite a few people, more than 2, have come out to me and said, hey, look for Peters to maybe not be even on the team this coming fall. We'll see what happens. But right now, I've got Dylan McCaffrey, your backup. Shea Patterson, if we were giving it a 4 Harbaugh, or Harbaugh had FACK, will be your starter in 2018 at the quarterback position.
James, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question here. I think a lot of Wolverine fans have the same question on their mind. What kind of stats do you project for Shea going into his first year with the Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a record year for the Michigan Wolverines. I really do, Lane. I think he can break the Michigan football touchdown record. I think he can break for a season. I think he can break the passing record for most yards this season. So I am predicting about 3,500 yards passing and 34 to 37 passing touchdowns through the air. Both would be Michigan all-time records. So I think Shea Patterson is definitely the quarterback. I think he's going to put up big-time stats. Michigan's receivers are both sophomores, the starting receivers, very seasoned. But I want to know from these guys, Lana, who do we think will be Michigan's starting quarterback in 2018? I think a lot of people have questioned, no, Shea Patterson's not the starter yet. Michigan's going to have a competition. Of course there's a competition. And let me say this. If for some reason Joe Milton came in and was playing like Cam Newton, he'll be the starter. Let's just be frank this coming fall. But as of right now, it's Shea Patterson. We want to know from you guys. Toss in the comments on YouTube, on Facebook Live, who will be Michigan's starting quarterback in 2018. We want to know from you guys.
All right, let's continue on to the running back position. We have Karan Higdon, of course, Chris Evans, and then True Wilson. Love that name, James. But what do you expect from this position for the Wolverines in 2018?
I think it's going to be one of the strongest, running back, combos that Michigan's had in 5+ years. Obviously, Higdon didn't get many snaps the first 3 or 4 games of the year last year. Chris Evans and some others were getting more snaps. Higdon and Evans will be a little bit of thunder and lightning, okay? A senior and a junior both have had a ton of playing time the last couple years, and Higdon's going to be your unquestioned starter. Had a couple 200-yard games. Both those guys in that Minnesota game where they put up 190+ each showed what they can do as a backfield combination. True Wilson, I'm putting him in here as number 3 only because Jim Harbaugh recently said he's the third string running back. He's been with Michigan for 2 seasons, was a under-recruited, smaller player out of the state of Michigan as a high school player. Big-time athlete, though, and I think this is one of those things where Jim Harbaugh is kind of putting his name out there in the media, giving him a little reward for really trying hard, putting his all in during spring practice and the offseason, being a great player in practice last year. But I think what it ultimately comes down to when we talk about playing time, this will be the depth chart going into the season. I truly believe that. When it comes to playing time, keep an eye out for freshman Michael Barrett. We've talked about him recently. Keep an eye out for what he does this year at the running back position. I think he can get a lot of snaps.
All right, the quarterback position, running back position seems to be pretty locked down. Let's take a look at the fullback position now, James. We've got a couple of Bens as your starter and backup for the Wolverines, and then we have Jared Wangler, the redshirt senior, in that third string position. Do you expect a lot from young Ben Mason and young Ben Van Sumeren this season?
Well, Mason really took over the starting role over a couple of veteran guys, most notably Khaled Hill last year. Mason came in as a true freshman, as a linebacker linebacker last year. Harbaugh said he hit so hard and kind of brought it so greatly that I actually think Mason is one of Jim Harbaugh's favorite players in his entire coaching career. How much he's talked about this guy, and he hasn't even been on Michigan's campus for a year yet. He's a linebacker out of Connecticut, made the position of fullback, unseated a guy in Khalid Hill who had 10 touchdowns in 2016. That's how good of a true freshman season he had.
There, James.
I mean, he's just a beast. Jim Harbaugh has said on multiple interviews that Ben Mason craves human contact unlike any player he's ever been around. So Mason will just give it to you. Ben Van Summer, true freshman coming in, is basically Ben Mason's twin brother, non-related twin brother from another mother. Same kind of build, same kind of mindset when he comes. That's why he's going to be the backup, going to play as a freshman. Last but not least, fifth-year senior Jared Wangler. Everyone remembers his father, a Michigan quarterback from about 35-ish plus years ago. Third string, making the switch over from linebacker. So really a couple linebackers here, moving over the fullback position, mostly get playing time. And these guys are going to be a great setup of fullbacks for Michigan in 2018.
All right, James, let's take a look at the trenches now, and specifically that left tackle spot. Who's going to be protecting Shea Patterson come 2018?
So James Hudson, redshirt freshman, didn't play in 2017 out of the city of Toledo. We all know my affinity for Toledo. Unseating Juwan Bushell-Beatty. Now, all the local media guys are saying right now it's Bushell-Beatty's the starter at left tackle as a fifth-year guy. I have it from very good sources, multiple sources that don't even know each other, that Hudson is going to win the role. He was almost ready to unseat Bushell-Beatty at the end of spring ball and is putting the work over summer so far. Bushell-Beatty in his fifth year, there's a reason he hasn't got much playing time, that people projected him to be a starter for multiple seasons. Now, keep an eye out for Jalen Mayfield. I have a source. That source knows who he is. That tells me a lot of things about Mayfield. Has been right on everything he's told me so far. Said that Ed Warner is all over Mayfield to put in the work this summer to be that starting left tackle as a true freshman. Keep an eye out for that. Only one time in Michigan football history has a true freshman started at left tackle. So Jalen Mayfield coming in thinking he has the ability to win the job. And
Jalen Mayfield, friend of the program, right, James?
Absolutely. You know, we interviewed him this past February.
Yep, great kid. Let's take a look at that left guard position now. Got the Ben Bredesen. He's going to be the returning starter. He's a junior. And then we look at a couple of redshirt sophomore and a redshirt freshman. So some youth behind him, James.
Yeah, Ben Bredesen started as a true freshman coming into his third year. He's moved around quite a bit, Lane. He's played multiple positions in his career at Michigan. Spinellis and Hungerford, guys who are more depth guys. I don't know if they'll be starters in the long term. We'll have to see. I really think Bredesen needs to stick around for his senior year for Michigan to not have so much, I think, in continuity, if that's even a word, on the offensive line like they've had for much of the past decade. A guy like Bredesen, much like Mason Cole, who has been there for 4 seasons starting, really can kind of bring an anchor to that offensive line. Now, Bredesen, Lena, is, as of right now, seen as a high-level NFL prospect. Probably not a first-round guy, but would probably get drafted at least the third round at worst after his true junior year. So he is a prospect who could go pro, probably the only one other than Shea Patterson right now on the offense because this offense is so young. So keep an eye out for Bredesen. If he plays, if Ed Warner kind of elevates his play level this year, gets him to that NFL talent. Some people are already saying that he has the ability to, and if he has the right coaching, I think potentially he could leave after his junior year. So this is the depth chart at left guard as things stand right now.
Let's take a look at this center position now, James, and you're going to see right there, TBD. So there's only one guy on the list. He's a sophomore, Cesar Ruiz. Is it worried some to you at all that there's only one guy kind of named right now?
I mean, look, I went through the depth chart. I just couldn't find anybody to put there. Like, other guys have moved around to tackle. Mason Cole is now in the pros. I don't know what they're going to do if something happens to Cesar Ruiz. There's no one that is, just waiting to step in. Ruiz is only a true sophomore, just finishing up his true freshman year. So when that is the case, I don't know who to put there. There are no other centers on Michigan's roster that I think have any chance of playing this year. So if Ruiz got hurt, I think you have to move somebody like Bredesen or somebody else, maybe Chuck Filiaga, who's a backup at guard. We're going to come up here and show, maybe move him to the center role. But right now, it is Cesar Ruiz or bust for at least the next 2 seasons, and hoping that Cesar Ruiz sticks around for all 4 years in the 2020 season and take it from there. So as of right now, it is Cesar Ruiz or bust. I don't have anyone who is a viable backup. Michigan will completely have to reconfigure the offensive line if Ruiz is not able to play for a game.
All right, let's take it to the other side of the line now, that right guard spot. We got a returning starter. He's a junior, and then a lot of youth behind him, James.
Yeah, I mean, Onwenu is a guy with some high-level talent. Now, Jim Harbaugh has been on him for a couple years for his weights. You know, there was a time that people were saying he's pushing almost 400 pounds. He's just a mountain of a man, Lena. Keep an eye out for Chuck Filiaga, one of Michigan's biggest recruits in the 2017 class. And with that being said, I think Filiaga is one that's going to be, disruptive this year. He's going to maybe get the sixth most snaps on the offensive line behind the 5 stars. I think they're going to put him in different roles. You might see him kind of kick it out to tackle if you absolutely needed to, barring an injury with someone. You could see him sneak into center. I don't know what they're going to do with Filiaga, but he is the guy of these 3 I'm most excited about now. I don't think Onwenu has shown enough that is making you think he's going to be a high-level All-Big Ten performer. So as of now, Onwenu is the starter. Filiaga is a guy who's going to demand snaps coming into his second year at Michigan, redshirted last year. But Jim Harbaugh said, hey, there was a time that I thought about pulling Chuck Filiaga's redshirt, getting him in the game when we needed some better play on the offensive line.
All right, let's wrap up the offensive line now, James. And we have a new starter at right tackle in Jon Runyan. What do you expect out of him in 2018?
Hey, I expect great play, just like we got from his daddy back 25, 30 years ago, Jon Runyan Sr. So Jon Runyan Jr. has come on with a new attitude throughout conditioning into spring practice. And the Michigan Football Strength and Conditioning, the new program that's in there, basically he has bought into it as much as anybody. And I think we're going to see some nice things from Runyan. I put Mayfield in there as a backup. We saw him on left tackle as well, because I think Jalen Mayfield is a guy who is ready to play for Michigan football, is ready to get snaps. I don't think Mayfield will redshirt. So the only, we see Mayfield the backup at multiple positions. There's a reason he's back up here, Landon, because he is, all the guys on Michigan's roster, Mayfield, I believe from the sources I've talked to, has the most likely to play and get significant snaps at right tackle, at left tackle. We'll see, but he's going to be getting some snaps in that second line this year. All
right, let's move on to the tight end position. There's a lot of names on this list, James, including, I know, one tight end that a lot of people are excited about, young Mustafa Muhammad for the program.
Yeah, definitely friend of the program. Have interviewed him. Zach Gentry is your starter. I think him and Sean McCune. It's funny. Sean McCune, we were told last year, pronunciation guy. Jim Harbaugh recently on his own podcast said Sean McKeon. I don't know what to say with this guy anymore. All I know is a nice player. Now, Eubanks there at the third string, I think, is an interesting player to keep an eye on, because he actually was kind of your starter, your 1A starter last year at the beginning of the year, had some nice play against Florida and then ended up getting hurt. So Gentry and McCune came on throughout the rest of the year. And I think Gentry, from what I've been told, has just had a phenomenal offseason. Look at these moves. Landon, he came into Michigan as Jim Harbaugh's first quarterback recruit in the 2015 class and didn't really cut it as a quarterback, but he's 6'7", is a freak athlete, can run like the wind. Some compared him to kind of like a Cam Newton as far as his size. You put Cam Newton at tight end, you're going to get some results like we saw from Gentry. So just learning the position. But Zach Gentry, Lena, I believe is going to be Michigan's leader in catches from the tight end position this year. That's why we put him at number 1, and I can't wait to see what Zach Gentry does. Now, he's had a couple seasons under his belt at the tight end role, but that tight end position is so deep. We're able to list 5 guys that we thought could get snaps really at any time. The big kind of one to keep an eye on, we talked about in a few shows ago, Tyrone Wheatley Jr., somebody that people thought was going to start 3 years ago, 2 years ago, never really has broken into that tight end role, has been rumored to be a transfer candidate. Keep an eye out for that one this summer.
All right, let's take it to the wide receivers now, James, and Tariq Black, Nico Collins, Jake McCurry. Not too many new names here. Yeah, so Tariq Black started the year last year, had a touchdown at a really big game against Florida, and Michigan fans were really excited about him. Really outperformed 5-star recruit in his own class 2017 in Donovan Peoples-Jones. Black is back. He is going to be a redshirt freshman this year. He did get his redshirt, but he actually told media recently, they asked him about it. He's like, they haven't told me for sure either way, although Jim Harbaugh did say he got his red shirt. He said, it doesn't matter. I'm not planning on using it anyways, which means he doesn't plan on for being in Michigan for 5 years. I think it's what you want to see out of your best wide receiver, the guy who will probably lead the team in catches in 2018. Tariq Black. Nico Collins is a player who came on at the end of the year, Lena, and got a lot of play there towards the end of the season. He's a backup. If they go 4 wide, if they go 5 wide even, Nico Collins will be there getting those 4 and 5 wide, those spread formation starting reps there. Jake McCurry, somebody that has been getting, he is the, other than Michael Dwumfour, he is the offensive, never heard of him, but some reason all the insiders are talking about him guy, coming in, came in as a walk-on, getting some
reps, getting some big-time play in spring football in these workouts. So keep an eye out for Jake McCurry. I had never heard of him. He's a walk-on, but a couple people I know said, hey, this guy is going to get some snaps this year. He's going to get some catches. Is the hype real with McCurry? I don't know. We're going to find out this fall.
TBD for sure. Let's continue on with the wide receiver position, though. We have DPJ Eddie McDoom. Love that name. Can you see McDoom stepping up for the Wolverines this season as a junior?
No, I mean, that's where I think we go 4 and 5 wide by receivers. I think McDoom is going to be the odd man out, even though he's kind of the backup to Donovan Peoples-Jones as it is right now. I think you'll see a tight end like Gentry in that 4 and 5 wide. I think you'll see Nico Collins in there. Maybe even a little bit of Chris Evans. We saw him split out wide last year. But Donovan Peoples-Jones is lightning in the bottle. He is the new version of Mario Manningham for the Michigan Wolverines. Had some trouble with routes. I don't really think he got the coaching of the wide receiver position that he needed last year coming in and starting as a true freshman. Has that coaching now with Jim McElwain. And to be frank, he's a guy, because of his play and because of Black's play, I mean, Kakoa Crawford's no longer on campus, and there's a reason. It's because Donovan Peoples-Jones' talent has basically taken Crawford and put him on the bench permanently. So Peoples-Jones should have a good year. This is I think, a confident of a 1-2 combo wide receiver with Black and Peoples-Jones that Michigan has had in 5-6 years. I think even going back to 2016 season, Michigan had some really great, strong wide receiver core. This is as confident as I've been, I think, 2 more years from now. If these guys stick around to their 4th year, you're going to talk about all-American potential at both wide receiver positions.
All right, let's take it to the slot position now, our last position on offense, and we have a new name for the starter, Oliver Martin, to be backed up by Grant Perry, the senior, James.
Look, people are questioning I put this out there on the internet. I put it on previous shows. I put it on my Twitter account, put it on the James Yoder Facebook account. People have been questioning this one. Grant Perry, a multiple-year starter. Oliver Martin didn't even give any snaps last year. What's the deal? Martin outperformed basically almost everybody from the wide receiver crew. His body is built more like a Christian McCaffrey. He's very, very compact, very shifty. Not necessarily has the size to be a running back, which they thought about changing him to at one point. But he just catches the ball better, has better moves in the open field than Grant Perry, and was one of Jim Harbaugh's favorite recruits because of his workman-like attitude when it came to getting the ball in his hands and not going down. Grant Perry, injury, also legal concerns, I think is finding himself kind of, as the years go by in his career, him getting less and less touches. Now, he led Michigan, wide receivers in all catches last year, so people are going to point to that. But I think youth will be served with Michigan football at the wide receiver crew this year, Lena. 3 sophomores, true star, I guess, second-year players, Black, Peoples-Jones, and of course Oliver Martin as a redshirt freshman coming in and playing in 2018 as your starters. I don't know what we really call slot a starting role, but we listed it because Michigan uses it so frequently, as does almost every team in college football in 2018. If not, I'm not sure what kind of offense you're playing, of course.
All right, so all in all, 8 returning starters for the Michigan Wolverines in 2018 on offense.
Yeah, so we've got 2 offensive linemen, then a new start, and of course Shea Patterson. Now, is Shea Patterson really a new starter? I don't know. He started in the SEC last year. He started in the SEC 2 years ago, a few games as a freshman. He's a new starter to the University of Michigan, and as such, we're going to list him as a starter. But what I want to start talking about, Lane, a little bit is Game Time. They are the sponsor of Michigan Football Report. I love the Game Time app, Lena. The best way to get last-minute sports concert tickets, Lena, 60 to 70% off if you use the app. Go to chatsports.com/tickets for iPhone, for Android. It's the best app out there for sports tickets. If you're going to a Tigers game, if you're going to a Michigan football game this year, Game Time is the way to go. I know you use Game Time recently.
Yeah. Just went to a Rangers game. $3 tickets, James. You really can't beat it. You absolutely can't. All right, so that was the Michigan Wolverine offense. We broke down that depth chart. Now let's take it to the coveted Michigan D. All right, so we're going to start off with the weak side defensive end position. And of course, we have the very favorite of all Michigan football fans, Chase Winovich.
Now, Chase Winovich, the man with the orange hair, Lena, came back, could have gone pro, maybe been a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. People have said, I've seen some of these early projections, if he can take another level up like he did the last couple seasons and really bring it there at, in his 5th year at the weak side defensive end with Rashan Gary, with some others getting a lot of the attention from the opposing offense, Chase Winovich can bump himself up there into a early 2nd round, potentially even a late 1st round NFL draft pick. Really excited to see him come back for 2018. Later, Carlo, Kemp, Luiji Vilain, guys that have really proven themselves, but will have the opportunity to do so in a backup role this year.
All right, let's take it to the strong side now. Of course, we have Rashan Gary, another fan favorite for the Michigan Wolverines. And then Aidan Hutchinson, another friend of the program. He's coming in as a true freshman. You have him in that third string spot, James.
Yeah, I think Aidan Hutchinson's going to get some snaps this year. I do not see him redshirting, considering Rashan Gary and considering Chase Winovich are going to be gone after this season. Most likely, Rashan could come back for 2019, but most people have him a top 10 pick in the 2019 NFL draft, likely to go pro early. So we'll see what happens, but all eyes, Lena, around Rashan Gary when it comes to Michigan football this year. Many have him as I said, a top 10 draft pick. Jim Harbaugh has said recently he's unquestionably the best player on the entire roster. And for a lot of Michigan football fans, he has not lived up to the hype. I think a lot of people thought, hey, by the time he's a sophomore, he's going to be first-team All-American, first pick in the draft. He is the only player in modern recruiting, which is about like 2000, 2001 to present, Rashan Gary is, to be the unquestioned #1 player across all recruiting services in his senior year. I think that actually matched this year in 2018 by the quarterback who went to Clemson. But at the time, 2016, Rashan Gary, considering maybe the best recruit of all time when it comes to consensusness about his abilities coming out of his senior year. So people expect All-American year from him. A lot of great defensive ends, and not only the Big Ten, but all across the country he's got to compete with. But expect a big year from Rashan Gary. He's obviously your unquestioned starter at the defensive end position.
There's a lot of returning starters on defense, but not at this position, James, the nose tackle position. We have Michael Dwumfour. So he's a redshirt sophomore, and then he's backed up by Donovan.
Yeah, I mean, Dwumfour is the spring hype, coach hype, kind of maybe a little bit deserved, obviously. A guy putting in a lot of good work, a guy making plays in spring practice. I think also motivating other players maybe to get with it. But Jim Harbaugh, Don Brown, the Michigan coaching staff, they really loved what Michael Dwumfour. A lot of people pegged him as a starter, and so as of now, without any different information, I'm going to put him as starter. Although just a few weeks back, I didn't necessarily believe the hype, and I'm starting to believe it the more I talk to people. He's going to have the opportunity to be a 3-year starter, Lena, and after Winovich and Gary, leave from the outside. Himself and another guy, Aubrey Solomon, we're going to talk about here in just a moment, are going to be the anchors of the Michigan defensive line as we go into the future after the Rashan Gary, Chase Winovich era that we're kind of probably wrapping up this season in 2018.
All right, you talked about him. Let's go a little bit more in depth now, James. Aubrey Solomon, the sophomore, he's going to be starting for the Wolverines this year at defensive tackle. What do you expect out of him?
I expect a lot out of him, actually. He unseated Bryan Mone as the starter last year. We've seen Mone in his 5th year. Yeah. Mone is a guy 3 years ago, in 2015, as a redshirt freshman. Jim Harbaugh stack ranked the entire roster kind of coming into the summer. He had Mone as a top 5 player, I think actually top 3, along with guys like Jabril Peppers and some others. So to see Solomon come in and unseat Mone last year as a as a true freshman, be a starter by the end of the year. He was Michigan's biggest recruiting get in the 2017 class from a defensive side. 5-star out of the state of Georgia. Many people thought he was going to flake out and decommit and go somewhere else, like his teammate, a linebacker who we're not going to mention. I will mention him, Otis Reese, did this past year, his high school teammate. He stuck with Michigan, was a starter by the end of the year, and I believe that you're going to see Rashan Gary sophomore year performance out of him, get really strong performance, and he'll be the unquestioned leader of the Michigan defensive line in 2019. And Atlanta, with all these juniors likely to go pro after this year, you might see Aubrey Solomon as the unquestioned leader of the entire Michigan defense in 2019 and beyond.
It's a great point, James. Let's bring it down to the linebacking core. We have Drew Singleton, another new starter. He's a redshirt freshman. What about his play, James, really makes you think that Singleton has what it takes?
Well, it's tough to say. I'm really relying on people's what people are telling me who have seen Singleton play and have seen him in practice last year, saw him in high school before he was injured, and have seen what he's done this spring. Now, Michigan is returning 9 stars. There's only 2 roles really up for grabs. One of them being, a defensive line position we gave to Michael Dwumfour. The other is a linebacker position, the weak side linebacker that Mike McCray, held for the last couple seasons. So we will see out of Singleton. I was told he had the best spring of all. Michigan brought him, I think, 4 or 5 linebackers in the 2017 recruiting class. Guys like Singleton, other players like Jordan Anthony that were 4 stars or above. So a lot of people going for this role. Lena, Singleton is the one. If he wouldn't have been hurt in his 2016 season in high school, Lena, I was told he would have been a top 25 player nationally. As such, he missed his senior year with a knee injury, dropped kind of down to the 100-ish range, and wasn't recruited as high. Fully healthy now, Drew Singleton, as we stand today, towards the end of June 2017, 2 months to left left to the season opener, I've got Drew Singleton as your starter to kind of come in there with Devin Bush and some other guys. I think this linebacking crew is going to be all-time for Michigan this year.
I like the call, James. Let's bring it to the middle linebacker position now. And, of course, we have Devin Bush Jr., the junior. He's going to be the starter, followed by Noah Furbush and then Cameron McGrone. What do you tell me about this position for the Wolverines in 2018?
Well, McGrone's got to be, he's got to play this year. He is being groomed to take over for Devin Bush, who most believe will go pro after this year. Devin Bush kind of was shot out of a rocket last year in AT&T Stadium versus Florida, and he never stopped sailing across the football field all season long. Michigan's only All-American last year, third-team AP All-American Devin Bush was. I expect him to come back with authority this year. He is a freak of nature athlete. He is so fast, not even funny. Furbush is going to get a lot of snaps. I think Furbush is a guy who could also put his hand down in the defensive line. Michigan, we've been told, will do some some zone looks this year. I think if they do zone, I think you could see Furbush being a guy who might rush from the outside, give Rashan Gary, give one of those defensive tackles a breather. If not Furbush, though, at the backup, I think McGrone could elevate himself because of his ability, high-level recruit, and will be the unquestioned starter, I believe, at middle linebacker in 2019 should Devin Bush Jr. go pro. Noah Furbush, though, Lena, kind of you call him a Chase Winovich's younger brother. They look exactly the same with the helmet on, with that blonde flowing hair. Noah Furbush will be heard from this year, whether it's at linebacker or putting his hand down at the defensive line position.
All right, we're going to take it to Viper now. That's one of the best positions on the Michigan football defense, of course. And we have Kalik Hudson, followed by Josh Ross. He's going to be his backup. And then we have, after that, his name absolutely.
No worries.
Jordan Anthony, thank you. Third-string redshirt freshman.
Yeah, Kalik Hudson is the guy, Lena. The second half of the year, he had a little bit of trouble. After Michigan got out of the out-of-conference season, Hudson was one that was getting picked on a little bit by defense, wasn't able to pick up some of the coverages, was getting burned in man-to-man when it came to the passing game. The second half of the season, he may have been Michigan's best player on the entire team. We know he broke that record for tackles for loss. I believe it was against Minnesota. I'll have to look that one up to be for sure. But another candidate to go pro early this year, Lena. As such, Jordan Anthony, Josh Ross, both in that 2017 recruiting class, will be players who will be vying to take his role going forward in the future. But these are that 2017 guys, Ross, Anthony, some of the other ones we've talked about already, that are going to be the next wave of linebackers for Michigan once this current crop goes pro. If we've got a couple of early entries like we may in Hudson and Bush. So keep an eye out for Ross. Keep an eye out for Jordan Anthony. He's not a name I've heard enough about this spring. We'll see what Anthony has for us this year.
All right, we're going to take it to the cornerback position now, the secondary. We have Lavert Hill. He's going to be the starter for the Michigan Wolverines. He's a junior, followed by Ambry Thomas and Miles Sims. James, there's a lot of hype around this corner position, I feel like, going into this season.
I believe Michigan is the best corner combo in the country. Some people point to schools like LSU and some others that may have it. But if you look at the analytics, the man-analytics, so what they did when the ball was thrown at them, what they did in man-on-man coverage, what these guys did when they were put on an island with no help. Lavert Hill, and then we'll talk about him in a second, David Long, had some of the best stats in college football over the past decade in man-to-man coverage. Now, that really helps when you have a great defensive line that puts a lot of pressure when you've got guys like Hudson and Bush protecting you in front in case there's a quarterback draw or something like that. But these players, as true sophomores last year, really there was no kind of fall off in production from Jordan Lewis and Channing Stribling, who were all Big Ten and All-American level players. Obviously, with Lewis being a high-level contributor for the Dallas Cowboys this season, no drop off from NFL level guys to 2017. Now these guys are seasoned, both juniors going into 2018. And I think, Lena, both guys who are going to be definitely candidates to leave early for the NFL. Michigan could have 5, 6, 7, 8 guys leave early this year. Without question, break the record unless some reason they all decide to stay another year.
There you go. You talked about him, James. David Long, he's going to be on the other side, backed up by Brandon Watson, the redshirt senior.
And so David Long is really the forgotten man. As I said before, Pro Football Focus had him against coverage, Lena. When you were in one-on-one coverage, the best cover cornerback in 2017 of any season since at least 2007 when they started tracking this metric. Quarterbacks threw for at 11 quarterback rating when he was covering their man, which is just phenomenal. He's the forgotten man. Some people say he might be the 6th or 7th best player in this defense, but he could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. He could be a first-team All-American. That's how stacked this defense is. Michigan's cornerbacks are going to have no problem this year covering defenders, much like they haven't had for the last several years under Don Brown's tutelage.
All right, a lot of hype around that corner position. Let's stick in the secondary. Go to the strong safety position. We have Josh Metellus. Now, he's a junior, and he's going to be the starter for the Wolverines.
Sure, and he started last year as a true sophomore, and he was one of the guys people were calling, Michigan fans' whipping boy. Really, I think the safety was really the only weak spot in the defense, and it really showed out in that bowl game loss, showed out against Penn State big time, outside of Mike McCray just getting completely smoked by Saquon Barkley. Casey Hughes, a name to keep your eye in. Redshirt senior, a fifth-year transfer from University of Utah, starter at cornerback. Not good enough to start for Michigan at cornerback, so where Michigan needs the most help potentially is the safety position. So they're going to move him a little slower to safety. I think he's going to get plenty of snaps, has an opportunity to unseat Metellus. So Josh Metellus is your starter, Lena. We will see what happens with guys like Casey Hughes and some others going into 2018.
All right, is the safety position as strong as the corner position?
Not even close. Yeah, not even close.
So.
Under no circumstances are they even close to being as strong.
All right, let's get to the free safety position now. And our starter there is going to be, of course, none other than Tyree Cannell, who's also in his senior year.
Look, we had a segment that the fans didn't like us too much. People were a little too sensitive, which was called "He Gotta Go" for about the first half of last year. We ultimately we succumbed to fans, people saying, "Oh, you can't call out, these are college kids." I don't agree with that at all. But Tyree Cannell was always on my "he gotta go" every time Michigan got torched, because he was always the one getting torched. So Brad Hawkins, former wide receiver, has a chance. Jamaric Woods, someone that got some snaps last year. We'll see what happens with those guys. But if anyone in this defense that's a starter now, a returning starter of the 9 that has a chance to be unseated, I think Cannell has got to be has his ears pinned back, kind of looking over all of his shoulders. Anytime he gets called into a meeting, he better be expecting, this is the one, this is where they're benching me, this is what's going, because he just did not perform in the second half of the year last year. Keep an eye out for Hawkins and Woods to be, guys nipping on his heels to take that role from him.
All right, so that's the wrap up with the defense. We'll quickly brush over the special teams and what the Michigan Wolverines have going on with that side of the ball in 2018. As for the kicker, it's the same guy.
Yeah, so look, a kicker, punter, kick returner, and punt returner, it's really the same folks returning from last year.
Yep.
We all know about Quinn Nordin. Hart and Robbins both got snaps last year. I don't know who it's ultimately going to be. Ambry Thomas is your starting kick returner, and of course, Donovan Peoples-Jones is probably Michigan's best punt returner since Steve Breston over a decade ago. So those are your special teams, all 4 starters returning. Lena, this is the most starting returning players Michigan's had in my lifetime.
It's a huge upside, no doubt, James. So, all right, guys, that was the depth chart for the Michigan Wolverines in 2018. Now we're going to do the social mailbag. I know you guys have a ton of questions you want answered by the king of Michigan football media, so let's get to it. Mark chiming in, and he wants to know about Ben Herbert and the conditioning that's been going on with these Michigan Wolverines this offseason.
Yep, so first time doing the mailbag, Lana, so keep these coming. If you guys see them, DM us, put them in the comments if you want. Just use maybe a hashtag mailbag. I don't know, get our attention somehow, or hit us on Twitter. Mark is my guy. I really like this guy. Wants to know about Herbert. I just believe Herbert is bringing some intensity that Michigan hasn't seen in a long time. Look, he was at Wisconsin. We know what Wisconsin brings. He was at Arkansas. You can say what you want about Arkansas's win-loss record. You can't say anything about their conditioning or the size of their players. Plenty of guys are making mass improvements. I think him and Ed Warner are really the ones making a big-time difference this year for Michigan this offseason. We're going to see it with guys being bulked up and ready to be physical this year. So great question, Mark. I think what he makes as a point there is, will Michigan lose these fourth-quarter leads? I don't think Herbert will be as responsible for that. I actually think it's going to be Don Brown switching up, his defense that was all man all the time to maybe dropping back into a zone sometimes when Michigan got a bigger lead. So Herbert's paying dividends, but I don't think he's going to be responsible for Michigan holding on to any of those leads this year. All
right, book it. Let's move on to Patrick Lawn, Hakeem of Wakanda. Great username. He has some questions about Ambry Thomas, James. What can you tell him?
Well, Ambry Thomas is going to get a ton of snaps in nickel. He is definitely your third cornerback going into this year, no matter what people say about Brandon Watson and Benjamin St. Just and some others. He may take some snaps from those starters. I think it's a nice position to have. Ambry Thomas will be playing in 2019 as your starting cornerback if Long and Lavert Hill go pro. He's unquestionably the starting nickel, Lena, the number 3 cornerback. He will get those snaps at nickel, but don't be surprised sometimes if they take a guy like Long or Hill who have a little more experience, put them in more of a zone or off at a different position, maybe to cover a running back out of the backfield, and let Thomas take snaps at the cornerback position when he's going against a top wide receiver from the other team. So Ambry Thomas is going to play a lot this year. Thanks to the question, Patrick Long. Some have said he had a chance to unseat Long or Hill. I don't think that's going to happen, but he will get a ton of snaps.
All right, Matt Johnson, he wants to know if Michael Barrett has any chance of breaking the top 3 at that RB position.
We just kind of covered this, and I was alluding to this question a little bit myself, Matt, so thanks for the question. I do believe that Barrett is kind of a talent that Michigan hasn't seen. He's very versatile, played quarterback in high school, Atlanta, can be a wide receiver. I think he's going to be a little bit slash role, may take some snaps, direct snaps as Jabril Peppers did a couple years ago. We'll see what happens with Barrett, but if I am projecting forward by the 8th or the 9th game this year for Michigan, I think Barrett will be the guy who's getting the third amount of snaps behind Chris Evans, of course, and behind your starter, Karan Higdon.
All right. Caden wants to know if there's what this recruiting class finish is going to look like for this 2019 class. It's off to a decent start, James. It could be definitely a top 10 or top 5 finish.
Well, they're back in the top 10. Actually, as according to 24/7, Michigan is the #1 recruiting class in the Big Ten after these 5 commitments that we just had happen over the weekend. So Caden's question came in before this flood of new commits, but it seems like Michigan's back on the ball. They are rolling when it comes to recruiting right now, Elena. So I think it's going to be a top 10 class, big time change from last year's class that wasn't even in the top 20. So good question, Caden. Keep an eye out for Michigan to keep the recruiting momentum going. And if, Lena, they have the kind of season I believe they have, which I'm predicting an 11-1 record, if they have that kind of season, I think you will see Michigan with a top 6 to top 8 recruiting class when all is said and done.
All right, we have a question coming in. I'm sorry if I totally butcher your name. Iowa Goddess. I think it's a little German there. And she has a tackle or a position about the tackle position. Question.
Yeah, so we've got the tackle position. We've got talking about recruiting targets. A couple questions there coming in from this. Thanks so much for the question. Yes. So let's talk about the starting tackle position. So we talked about it's going to be 2 new starters. James Hudson is going to be the guy I project over Jawan Bushell-Beatty and Jon Runyan. So those are your starters. If both those guys perform to the level with Ed Warner that we think they can perform, at least be serviceable, at least be in the better half of the Big Ten. Don't be the 8th or 9th best offensive, left guard or left tackle, right tackle in the Big Ten. If they're in the top 6 or 7 in the Big Ten, I think Michigan's offensive line will be good enough, Lena, to have the ability to really open up things for Shea Patterson, to open up things for the running attack, and allow Michigan's offense to perform at the levels they did in the first half of 2016 and back in 2007 prior to the dark period that we've been in for the last little bit. So Hudson's your starter at left tackle. On the other side, Jon Runyan, don't know what to expect to him, although we've just told he is workmanlike, putting in his time with Ed Warner and learning the playbook, learning all the different calls, and then, of course, in the strength and conditioning room with Ben Herbert. Will we beat Ohio State this year? I think was the other half of his question.
Yes.
Absolutely, no questions, FACK. We'll see about that, though. But I really think that recruiting, offensive line, and the ability to beat Ohio State are all in the up and up, Lena.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in and asking your questions. Up next, the man down. He has a question about Tariq Black and his recovery, and if you think he's 100% ready to go this season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Tariq Black, but from everything I've seen, both in some limited footage I saw on social media, in spring practice, some people I talked to who were actually at practice, including that last one, or I guess the third to last one, where they're supposed to hold a spring game. Some people still had a chance to come in. I think Tariq Black is 100% recovered. I think he will be Michigan's #1 wide receiver this year. Look for him with a guy like Shea Patterson who can sling the ball all over the place, Lena. Look for Tariq Black to get 60 catches this year. I know that's a big jump as a sophomore, as a redshirt freshman, sophomore, whatever you consider him, to get 60 catches. But I think Michigan's offense is going to open up big time this year. Shea Patterson can throw the ball like no quarterback Michigan's had in a decade. And as such, Tariq Black and Donovan Peoples-Jones, Zach Gentry are going to reap the benefits of that.
All right. Up next, Blue Blitz has a question about the secondary, James.
Yeah, I like this guy, Blue Blitz. He's just my boy. Let me just tell you that. We've been talking a lot on Twitter. Thank him for some information he's given me recently. So I don't think the defensive line will be better than the second unit in 2017. And the reason being is because they've lost Mo Hurst. So you lose maybe one of the best 3 or 4 defensive linemen in Michigan football history, a first-team All-American, a consensus All-American. And who do you replace him with? Now you've got players who were backups last year in starting roles, like Michael Dwumfour. You don't have a Mo Hurst necessarily. The only thing you can bank on then is that Rashan Gary, Chase Winovich have gotten so much better. And then guys like Kwity, Paye, and Donovan Jeter, and maybe Deron Irving-Bey take a big step forward when they haven't really seen the field so far in their careers as Michigan football players. I'm not expecting much out of Bryan, Mone, so I think it's at least it's either the defensive line, the second unit is either flat but more likely down, because you don't have necessarily the guys who I see coming into starting roles, or could, like, think about when we started last year, Aubrey Solomon was second team. He ended up being a starter. I don't see any players like that on the defensive line for Michigan this year, but I think we'll have to see. Safety play in the spring, let's just say the safety play still has a long way to go to be at the level Michigan needs it to be.
And Patrick has a very similar question. He wants to know about Michigan safeties. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You said there's really nothing to be too hyped up about heading into 2018, but can't they cover this season?
The Michigan offense really kind of looked in the mirror. What was wrong with us last year? The coaching staff did. They made some moves. Tim Drevno and some others, Greg Frey, not with the team anymore. They did the same thing on defense, maybe a little later in the year, not necessarily the day after the bowl game, but in all Michigan's 5 losses last year, Lena, except for Penn State, Michigan had a commanding lead or a lead in the second half, right? Michigan State lead in the, shut them out in the second half. Wisconsin led. Ohio State had a 2-touchdown lead. And with that, the defense really didn't change anything when they had a lead. I know you want to say defense prevents you from winning, but for this Michigan defense last year, what the man-on-man coverage did was really gave the other team the opportunity to exploit some guys, mostly the safeties. We saw Tyree Cannell, we saw Josh Metellus get burned, most notably in that bowl game. And as such, I think Michigan needs to change their defense a little bit and give reps to guys like Ambry Thomas, Brad Hawkins, some others, if those safeties aren't performing to where they need. I agree with you, Patrick. They can't cover.
All right, let's go to Donnie now, and he wants to know, how much spread option will we see with Shea Patterson at the helm?
Not as much as I think I originally thought when Shea Patterson came on board a number of months ago. I think it'll be very limited, a few times a game, but more or less later. I don't think it's going to give Shea the ability to run like they did with Colin Kaepernick at the 49ers. I think it's going to be a spread option that if he gives the ball off, more of a run-pass style, but if he does end up running out of the pocket, it's not going to be to take off run. I think it's going to be to exploit maybe a tight end, blocks, and then releases upfield. You get that defender crashing down Shea. Shea kind of tosses over the top there. So I don't think as much as maybe I was projecting 4 or 5 months ago, but a few. I think Shea Patterson will have 3 to 5 designed runs per game at Michigan, much less than Kaepernick did when Harbaugh was his coach. But he certainly is not going to be running like Michigan used to with Denard Robinson 20 times a game by any means. So we'll see a few of it. Keep an eye out for the run-pass option, Atlanta. That's the one where the quarterback snaps the ball in the shotgun, hands it off, or throws it instantly. It's not the quarterback's option to. It's either he hands it off or passes it. It should really be called a handoff pass option, not a run pass option, but nevertheless.
All right, Donnie, thank you so much for our question. And before we continue on with our social mailbag, we just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Game Time. #1 app on the App Store for all your last minute ticket prices. You got sports tickets, you got concert tickets, so much more, James, up to 60 to 70% off.
Look, if you're going to an NBA game, Major League Baseball game, college football, NFL this fall, Elena, there's no better way to do it than with Game Time. Go ahead, chatsports.com/tickets. I'll redirect you right to the App Store for your respective app, iPhone, Android, whatever it is. Game Time is the way to go for all your sports and concert tickets this year.
All right, Alan Pinky, he has a question on Karan Higdon and his status.
Yeah, well, I mean, Karan Higdon's pretty healthy, right? Like, I mean, I know there was some nagging injuries here and there, and some people had said he's limited a little bit in spring, gave some other guys some opportunities. But as far as I know, unless something's changed over the weekend and the past week that's been really underreported or under-discussed by some of the folks I talked to, Karan Higdon is coming into this year as your starter, as your uninjured and healthy starter, Lena. And as such, I think that he's going to have a big-time year. I see over 1,200 yards from Karan Higdon this year without question. Now, Chris Evans is going to take a few snaps from him, but nevertheless, I think Karan Higdon is going to have a really nice year at running back for Michigan. I'm projecting him to have 1,200, 1,300 yards. Depends how much action Chris Evans gets at the second running back position.
Well, he's a senior. It is in time to ball out. But let's take it to Eli G now, and he wants to know, how many times will the tight ends take a handoff this year, and do you think Harbaugh and Pep Hamilton will continue to throw the ball in the monsoon?
All right, I get what this guy's doing. I get it, Eli. Okay, so what are they talking about, handoff? Michigan was in the wrong formation, but still called that tight end fullback handoff that Khalid Hill used to run, and they fumbled it, of course, against South Carolina in the bowl game, throwing in the monsoon, John O'Korn against Michigan State. I hope Michigan's learned their lessons, because if some of these mind-boggling offensive play calls between Tim Drevno, Jim Harbaugh, and Pep Hamilton happen again this year, I think Michigan fans will rightly have the opportunity to question Jim Harbaugh's competency as the head coach long-term. I'm giving a little bit of a pass last year, Lena. I'm giving him just a little bit of a pass from last year because he was so limited with so many young guys, with the quarterback play not being where it's at. But with Shea Patterson and all these starters returning later, there is no way in the world that Michigan should be making that kind of call, those kind of calls throughout the 2018 2018 season.
All right, Eli G, thank you so much for your question joke there.
All right, I want to tell everybody about the Michigan Football Report on YouTube. I want to make sure everyone goes and subscribes to Chat Sports. Type in chatsports.com/YouTube Michigan. It'll drop you right into the YouTube website, the YouTube app. If you're on your phone, you hit that subscribe button for Chat Sports. You will know every time we upload a show of the Michigan Football Report and some other great content from college football, Cam Rogers Show, Quick Hitters, and all the other great content from Chat Sports. Chatsports.com/YouTube Michigan Football Report, the #1 most watched Michigan football show in the world. All right, thanks to Lena. She just stepped off some breaking news in the world of college football. She's going to go report on. I am going to tell you about the Michigan football job posting that went up just this past week that I have a candidate for. Reminder, I am James Yoder, the king of Michigan football media. Is there a new job out there for me? Is there something else I should be doing with my days? I think there could be. Want to throw up a graphic here if we have the ability to. James Yoder, Jim Harbaugh, 2018 Michigan football. I am applying for Jim Harbaugh's executive assistant role. You see this? Harbaugh, Yoder, born in Ohio, bred to be Ohio State, Michigan football 2018. I want to talk about the qualifications listed on the job posting, and I want to see, hey, am I the right guy for the role? I want to kind of see if I have the skills required to be Jim Harbaugh's executive assistant, now being vacated by JT Rogan, friend of the program. All right, let's take a look at requirement number 1 to be Harbaugh's executive assistant. You need to assist in Harbaugh's operations, scheduling, communications, and administration. Who's better at that than me, okay? I'm starting Chat Sports. We've got 15 programs, 30 episodes, 40 episodes a week. I know about operations. I know about scheduling. I am the king of communications and administration. Nobody is a better administrator than James Yoder. There's no question in my mind that I am qualified to be this job. We're going to give that one. Does James Yoder qualify for this requirement to assist Harbaugh on ops, scheduling, communications, and some other things? Give it the green check mark. I am absolutely qualified to be that man. I could be the guy for Jim Harbaugh. Let's take a look at the next requirement. Maintain Harbaugh's calendar. There was a time when they considered calling the Google Calendar app the James Yoder Calendar app, because I am Mr. Calendar, never miss an appointment, schedule everything, and I'll tell you what, I can schedule things for Jim Harbaugh like nobody. Harbaugh has had a reputation. Maybe, he shows up too early for things, shows up too late. I think he needs somebody like me who can come in and show him how to really efficiently run a calendar, run a schedule. I kind of believe maybe Harbaugh carries an outdated phone. We're going to get him an iPhone 10. We're going to get push notifications. I'm going to be there knocking on his door 4:30 every morning, making sure we're making those 5 o'clock meetings. We'll stop. We'll take out the trash together. We'll stop and get some coffee. We need whatever we need, Jim. Coach Harbaugh, my future boss, I will be there for you. Does James Yoder qualify for this one? Green check mark. Absolutely. I want you guys tell me in the comments if you're disagreeing with me in any of these. I want you to tell me in the comments. I think it is a slam dunk. But we're going to go through all the requirements to get this job to see if I qualify for them. Responsible for Harbaugh's travel. Are you kidding me? I was the first guy that I knew to get TSA pre, okay? So I'm definitely the kind of guy that Jim Harbaugh needs to be responsible for his travel. Not throwing names out there. Saw JT Rogan at the airport maybe one time. He was going through the old average line with all the schmucks. Harbaugh and I, TSA pre all day. Showing some little footage here, okay? Is there a man better qualified? I'm rocking the jersey. I've got my kid wearing Michigan. Charles Woodson and I hobnob. Responsible for Harbaugh's travel is kind of the one coming up. I'm traveling to games in Dallas, bringing kids. If I can bring kids, if I can go to the Final Four, travel with the team, travel to all the games, hang out with Charles Woodson at the Super Bowl, you don't think I'm the guy who can handle Jim Harbaugh's calendar? Taking pictures with Steve Fisher, the only Michigan coach to win a national championship in basketball. Find me a candidate who is more responsible when it comes to travel, especially around Michigan football. There's no way you can find one. Do I qualify to be responsible for Jim Harbaugh's travel? I'm giving it a green check mark myself. Boom. The people have spoken. Green check mark. Let's take a look at the next requirement to be Jim Harbaugh's executive assistant to take over for JT Rogan. Maintain Harbaugh's Rolodex. This is both personal and professional contacts. Look, I mean, people can say they're more organized than me. The people can say they have better contacts than me, but I have got direct experience with Jim Harbaugh alone. Who does David Shaw, Stanford head coach, the guy who took over for Jim Harbaugh at Stanford, who does he turn when he needs tickets for a Golden State Warriors game, when he wants to talk about the Stanford program in the city of San Francisco? That is James Yoder, folks. You don't think I could bring that level of Rolodex handling to the Michigan football program? I'll be taking Jim. Look at this. Trophies. That is the GM of the Giants, the president of the Warriors, Dwayne Wade, hanging at the NBA Finals. I am the king of the Rolodex, hanging out with Dwayne Wade, hanging out with Jim Harbaugh's former assistant, David Shaw. There is nobody who can handle that Rolodex, be kind of the liaison between Jim Harbaugh, the coach, and Jim Harbaugh, the man, like James Yoder can be. All right, do I qualify to maintain Harbaugh's Rolodex? The people have said, ding, yes, I do. All right, what is the next requirement to be Jim Harbaugh's personal executive assistant? Event planning for all football functions. All right, I want to just lay out my qualifications here. I threw a Super Bowl party that was attended by 1,000+ people, some of the biggest name in sports with the Pac-12. I sat with Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and some other Warriors players at the Super Bowl, as you see here. I've thrown 15 different major events with major sporting personalities. Klay Thompson rocks my Chat Sports sunglasses. Models like Emily Ratajkowski hang out with me. Draymond Green. There's no way I'm not qualified to plan football functions with Jim Harbaugh. We'll have models. We'll have NBA superstars. We'll be doing all kinds of great things. Jim, hire me for the role. Do I qualify for this events and planning for football functions? Green check mark. Next qualification, and behind the screen there, producer, if you want to throw up that campaign slogan anytime, you feel free. The people want to see it. All right, produce content needed by Jim Harbaugh for meetings, both with coaches and with players. I mean, I'm running a content company here. This show, Michigan Football Report, are you telling me if I was in charge of Jim Harbaugh's day-to-day as the executive assistant, we wouldn't be doing shows all day? Harbaugh would be the king of Michigan football media himself. He wouldn't even need guys like me. So I don't have to spend time on this one. We all know I qualify for this one. Does James Yoder produce content? Would he be the guy to produce content needed for Harbaugh for meetings and appearances? I'm going to go ahead and give it the green check mark myself, folks. Absolutely the man for the job. I like to see a candidate that is more qualified for me than that role. All right. Next one, assist Harbaugh with personal appearances and engagements. Well, I think that my qualifications at some of that last footage speak for themselves there. I've taken Dwayne Wade, guys like Charles Woodson came to my Super Bowl party, let me put his name on it, presented by Charles Woodson. I am the man to take Harbaugh all around when it comes to appearances and engagements. We'll hit up Radio Row. We'll be doing the Super Bowl together. We'll be sitting courtside at NBA playoff games. As long as you're paying Jim, I am the guy to take you. We'll be taking pictures outside of stadiums like Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, especially this year when Michigan is in the college football playoff. We'll be at the Final Four together, Jim. I don't think JT took you last year. What's going on? I think James Yoder is your man. It'll be Yoder, Fisher, Harbaugh taking pictures courtside. Do I qualify? Already got the green check mark up there. Absolutely. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, James Yoder is a candidate, maybe the leading candidate, to be Jim Harbaugh's executive assistant for the 2018 football season and beyond. Harbaugh, Yoder, both born in Ohio, both named Jim, both bred to beat Ohio State. Jim did it as a player. When I'm there, he will do it as a coach. It is your winning combination for Michigan football and 2018. The next qualification, the requirement for the job, special projects as assigned by the head coach. Well, I think I'm your guy there, Jim Harbaugh. I have all kinds of special projects going on. I've already mentioned a few of them. Charles Woodson trusts me with his wine. I do some cool things there. Go to football games, go to the Super Bowl. I am the man for special projects. My middle name is Special. James Special Yoder. I am the guy. Do I qualify? We're going to get up the little check mark. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. We'll help the check mark there in a second. All right, next one up there, folks. We've got our next qualification for Jim Harbaugh's personal assistant. I want to see there up there on the screen, and we will take it from there. We finally got the green screen. All right, there we go. There we go. All right, what is our next qualification for Jim Harbaugh's coach? 5 years related experience. I mean, what are we looking for, coach? A 27-year-old? James Yoder is decades older than that at least. I've got 20 years of experience, not just with football-related experience, with Michigan football-related experience. I've been going to games for 30 years, been doing all kinds of things in sports for years. I have more experience than you wanted to. I think the only reason you wouldn't give me this job is that I have too much experience. Throwing up that footage again. A guy who can take David Shaw from a one-on-one conversation to a Warriors playoff game in the same day has got to be the guy for you at the University of Michigan, Jim. I am qualified. 5 years related limited experience. I've got 5 times that kind of experience when it comes to being a executive assistant for Jim Harbaugh at the University of Michigan. So, do I qualify? Green check mark, baby. I absolutely do. There is nothing that I've seen so far that does not make me the ideal candidate to be Jim Harbaugh's executive assistant. Strong written, verbal, and verbal communication skills. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, who are we talking about here? It's me, the king of Michigan football media. I don't even have to look at this one any further. I'm just going to go up. I'm going to draw in the camera right there. It's a green check mark right there. Boom. They got it for me. I'm your man when it comes to written and verbal communication, Jim. I'll write your text. I'll write your emails. I'll take your I'll take your calls for you. You can just say, I'm going to turn it over to Yoder. He knows what he's doing. All right. Next up, does he possess outstanding interpersonal and communication skills? That's kind of the same thing, I think. I'm not sure why the Michigan football job posting had to have pretty much the same thing multiple times, but the answer is undoubtedly a yes on this one. I don't think there's any question that my outstanding interpersonal and communication skills would come in handy for the job at Michigan football. So go ahead and give me a check mark right there. Next one up, baby. Let's take a look. I want to pull up my notes here because I think that I'm the man for the job, and this segment will prove that out. Next qualification, the ability to travel with Harbaugh and the Michigan football team. I think there is no question I am the best candidate. I fit the requirement, and if you take any resume that the Michigan football program is going to get, there's no doubt in my mind that James Yoder will have the best qualifications when it comes to traveling with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan football team. And we'll see coming up. I'm buying the jersey with my own hard-earned money, the new Michigan Maize jersey. I'm taking my kid to the game in Dallas, traveling with him, traveling with family to make sure that we are supporting the University of Michigan. I even saw that he had that Adidas jersey on. We replaced it this year with the Jordan one when they finally started. There you go, right there. Replaced it with the Jordan jersey when the Jordan brand started creating him. I'm making sure former Michigan head coach, a national championship head coach, Jim Harbaugh, Fisher won one. He's hanging out with Yoder at the Final Four. I think that proves that alone that you should be able to hire me and trust that I will be able to travel with the football team, be able to disseminate and schedule whatever kind of travel you need. James Yoder will be there for you in 2018 and beyond. Go ahead and give me that green check mark for that bad boy. Next up, what are the requirements we have? Ability to work weekends. I live work on the weekends. Coach, my laptop is always open. I'm on the phone. I'm picking it up when people call me. I am your guy for the ability to work weekends. I'm working nights. I'm up at 5 a.m. I will do what it needs, what it takes, Coach Jim Harbaugh, to be the best executive assistant you can ever imagine for the Michigan football program. So I'd like you to give me the job as my plea to you. No one will do the job like James Yoder. We even created some artwork for you. Yoder Harbaugh, I'm giving the green check mark on that one. Yoder Harbaugh 2018. We were born in Ohio, Coach. We were bred to beat Ohio State, and together, Coach Harbaugh, we will beat the Buckeyes in 2018 and beyond, as long as the two of us are sticking together at the Michigan football program. James Yoder, the next executive assistant to Jim Harbaugh at Michigan football. That, folks, is that's my plea. I'm your man, Coach. I am the man for the job, and there is no question that there will be no candidate that has the ability to do the job for you like James Yoder does. I am James Yoder, the king of Michigan football media, folks. I want you to go ahead and follow me on Twitter. If you support my role as Jim Harbaugh's next executive assistant, if you think I'm the man for the guy, DM me. I'm going to collect all of your support. I'm going to paper mail them to Jim Harbaugh on a FedEx label, make him sign for it to read all the support that we have. Go ahead and give me a follow on Twitter. Follow Chat Sports on Facebook, Chat Sports Michigan Wolverines page on Facebook and YouTube, and we will see you guys next week.